Welcome to a special show on the 2025 Delhi Literature Festival, a celebration of words, ideas and culture held at the iconic Bikaner House in the heart of the capital. This year's theme, Delhi Writes, Voices, Visions and Verses, brought together powerful conversations at the intersection of literature, business, politics and policy. Join us for a few highlight conversations in these special episodes of Media Dialogues with Storyboard 18 as some of the finest minds took to the stage with bold books, sharp insights and unfiltered perspectives.
I have to begin by asking you this. Usually authors are influenced by other authors. You know, Salman Rushdie says Anton Chekhov and Joseph Conrad were his absolute favorites. But you seem to have been influenced by the authors of 148 love letters. So tell us a little bit about that.
That's wonderfully put. Very much drew upon not only memory, epiphanies, of course, that came to me as I wrote, but I also drew upon these wonderful love letters that I discovered as I was leaving for Budapest in a tin trunk. And these were letters mostly from my father to my mother.
Did they make you blush?
No, I knew that they were like that.
Right.
Meaning my father was a romantic. And he was very expressive, demonstrative, sensitive. My mother was tough, sometimes abrupt, hid her feelings sometimes. So, I found most of the letters were from my father. And the few that I found of my mother were very dry, very matter of fact. So, but his letters were a source, gave me an insight into that period, into the emotions, into how young people related to each other, not only as man and woman would, but even as friends, as, as scholars in a university, as young men, like he talks in many of his letters, he talks about his angst when he's looking for a job and he's not getting a job. So many things of that time. He talks about the depression, which was in the 1930s, yes, which was hitting the world, but also India. So all of this is very much expressed in those letters. So I have mined them, definitely. And but for David, it may well have turned into an epistolarian novel. Yeah. But I plan to, I hope someday, have it as a separate novel, like Tumhari Amrita type of novel.
Has Mr. Puri become more fervent in writing letters to you after that? Have you been inspired or?
No, we also belong. And one of the things that I must, say from, if you don't mind, I'll read something from here about the importance of letters. Yeah. I'm myself a believer in letters. And I feel it is the most beautiful way of conveying your feelings. It's also, something very different from writing WhatsApp messages or email messages where you instantly just send off something. This is very considered. You meditate on what you're going to write, what you're going to say. Some deepest emotions get expressed. Sometimes when you're very angry, you hold back, So it's also relationship building, remote relationship building, you will see from the letters.
Some say the book sings, so I'm expecting you to sing a little bit for us. Talk us through the stages from your writing desk in Hungary to...
Right. This untold story, this story that was so unique and powerful, was wanting to be told for decades. And I only started writing it in Budapest when I was ambassador there. And I wrote 100 pages, and then I got a writer's block or whatever it is called, and life took over, family, profession, everything. And then it remained like that until I returned, after being 18 years outside India, when I returned in 2018. And then in 2020, COVID came. And that was a moment of reckoning, because it was now or never. We got up those days thinking, looking at the oximeter, whether we'll be alive the next day or not. So I said, no, this is my life's project, and I have to write it. And the day I finished, I wrote it in 1 year, 270,000 words. And then when I finished, I told my husband, now I can die. So it was that kind of, cloudburst of expression which had been pent up within me.
So all that poetry was
the
also
poetry.
written. It was all together.
So poetry. My parents were very poetic people, but particularly my father, Ranjit Hoskote talks about poets, and he says they are married to bird song. And he was someone like that. So he would sing to us every evening a poem from a poetry book which he dedicated to me in 1983. I wish I had brought it today to show to you, in his own handwriting, and some of that is on the front page, Bal Kavi's poem. So Marathi poetry, Sanskrit poetry, from Kalidas in particular, and English poetry, or it's threaded into this novel, woven into its tapestry, as seamlessly as I could. But it had to be that, because that generation, the first publisher I sent my draft to said, but people don't speak like this. They don't speak so poetically. So I said, you should have met my parents and people of that generation. They were very literate, literary, and they would spout poetry with.
Now, how does Swallowing the Sun do this? You resist both colonial romanticism and nationalist nostalgia, and this comes through when at one time Maltese suitors face off about serving the British, the ICS.
Yes.
That whole thing.
Yes.
Was this balance important to maintain historical integrity? Because you say at that time, Malti says that, look, we've got to take the best from both.
Yes.
We can't, just sort of brush aside
Yes.
one,
Yes.
trying to sort of, preserve
Yes.
or
Yes.
exalt
Yes.
another. So how does this come through?
So I've tried to look at history and that period through the eyes of young Indians of that time. The lens is very much that of these young people, as I mentioned right at the beginning, about their being a Western, educated, and yet very proud Indian identity being cultivated within themselves and overcoming self-doubt. So it is from that lens that I have tried to look at the events and their engagement with the making of history. So if I will look at how they engage with the freedom movement. If you look at Guru and Malti, they begin with the theater of resistance, staging a play by Mama Varerkar, one of the revolutionary writers, playwrights of that time. And they play these very idealistic young, one is a young lawyer, the other is this feminist, early feminist Nandini, and how they then become lovers. But most importantly, it's a very strong nationalist statement. And in Marathi, the first play held at Elphinstone College. And then that leads to satyagraha cells being formed as a follow-up. And then their engagement in the Simon Commission protests, their classmate is Yusuf Meher Ali, and then I think the swallowing the sun moment for Malti comes when later she finishes her legal studies and she wins a major trial of, a revolutionary who happens to be her landlord, Mohan Kaka, and who had engaged in armed resistance. But it's a path-breaking trial and precedent-setting one. So there is this whole trajectory of how they engage, how they see the British Raj, how they see other people who are engaged in freedom struggle. Also the contestations between Veer Savarkar, Hindutva, Hindu Mahasabha, also the Anushilhan Samiti and the armed revolution versus Mahatma Gandhi's peaceful resistance and non-cooperation movement, all of that. And then there is this element I think you mentioned when we were talking earlier, that there is this element of to what extent women were engaged in this freedom movement. And that, along with other unsung heroes, without whom the Mahatma Gandhis and the Madan Mohan Malviyas and the Annie Besants would not have achieved what they did. So I wanted to bring out that aspect of women's contribution to the freedom movement.
You've got a huge reception there and it has struck a chord. So how does it strike a chord with so many different, from the Northeast down to the South? How does a book that is actually centered around characters from Maharashtra, let's be honest, evoke such a response?
Well, first of all, as I said, it is, the themes are universal. Also very rooted and pan-Indian in that sense. So it's very authentic and Indian, but also with universal themes. So I've found that even non-Indians have warmed to it very spontaneously. And it's intergenerational. To use, someone said that it is tense without time. It's timeless. So even though it is a historical fiction, it is contemporary. It is, as you said in the beginning, very relatable to the readers. Yeah. And I've found that not only women, but also men have loved it, and young people have loved it, as well as the older generation who can relate to their fathers and grandfathers having participated in the freedom movement, and it is a tribute to our ancestors.
More from the Delhi Literature Festival in just a bit, including bold takes, brilliant books, and unfiltered perspectives from the sharpest minds in business, policy, and the arts. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching a special edition of Media Dialogues with Storyboard 18. With spotlight conversations from the 2025 Delhi Literature Festival, where voices, visions, and verses are shaping the conversations that matter.
That the youth of our country now are getting bigger, they're contributing more, they're getting larger, they're getting wiser than, the not so young anymore. How do you think that has contributed currently and in the future? How important do you think the youth demographic of our country is?
So, सबसे पहले तो मैं एक मिथ्या यहाँ पे ज़रूर आपके माध्यम से तोड़ना चाहूँगी. यूथ कोई आज की इजाद नहीं है. जो जनरेशन हमसे पहले आए थे, और मैं यहाँ पर देख रही हूँ हमारे कई वरिष्ठ नागरिक भी बैठे हैं, उन्होंने भी भारत को, जो भारत आज है, उसे बनाने में अपनी जवानी खपा दी है. तो मुझे लगता है कम से कम पहले जोरदार तालियां उस जनरेशन के लिए बजाइए, who fought for our independence, who basically fought the 3 wars, who have ensured that they have kept our enemies at bay. And जैसे मैंने कहा उन्होंने अपनी जवानी खपा दी इस देश को बनाने के लिए. But we're very fortunate because we are today the youngest nation and the largest democracy in the world. When I say youngest nation, I mean in terms of our demography. We have about 65% people who are below the age of 35. So that itself is a huge asset. And this asset is time bound. Because obviously अगले 25 से 30 साल में ये जो 65% हमारी population है, it is going to grow old. But I think kudos to our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, who has sort of understood and has started harnessing this energy, this youthful energy that India has. And that is why when we talk about Vikasit Bharat, when we talk about a developed India, he talks about youth-led development. इसका अर्थ है कि आप युवा के नेतृत्व में देश के सशक्तिकरण की बात कर रहे हैं. And of course, from a global point of view as well, this is extremely important. It means that we have this entire big demography as not only as a human resource, but it also means as labor force, as innovators, as entrepreneurs, as tech innovators who are going to harness groundbreaking technology like artificial intelligence and ensure कि विकसित भारत का संकल्प सिद्धि तक लेकर जाया जा सके.
Absolutely. I think 2047 is really a year for us, which is when we predict Viksit Bharat. और जैसे कि हमारा Wave Summit भी अब हो रहा है, which is all about AI, it's all about tech coming into our country. So,
or even the gaming summit that we have.
Yes, of course.
You know, it's such a rarity for the Prime Minister of any country
Right.
to actually call on the gamers in a country. Otherwise, I remember when I was in school, gaming was something जिसपे थोड़ा डांट पड़ती थी. मतलब, you know, कोई भी मॉम कहती थी कि भाई इससे बेटर है कि किताबें खोल के अपने एग्जाम की तैयारी करो.
Absolutely.
But to actually see the economic potential in gaming as being such a powerhouse, not only of leading innovation and technology, but also seeing it something that can be leveraged for economically strengthening the country.
do you notice a change in how it used to be when you used to accompany your mother and what you used to hear from her, and now when you're actively into it in person, personally, what do you feel is different now?
So first of all, I don't agree that it's an industry. It is not. Politics is not an industry. Politics is not a profession either. And I think this is the right platform to say that out loud because I want the youth of the country to join politics. But like I said, it is not an industry. It is not a profession. You need to make sure that you are strengthening yourself with a degree, finish your education, make sure that you actually develop some kind of professional identity. In my case, it was law. By the grace of God, I got ample time to build a very robust practice for myself, and then I entered into politics. राजनीति केवल सेवा का माध्यम है. It's an amplifier. So what I used to do in litigation was maybe help a family or an individual at a time. In politics, it just gives you the tools to amplify that good and maybe ensure that it reaches a larger audience. It's more, politics is all about impact. You know, many people talk about the political game. It's never about playing the game. It is never about being played. It is about rewriting it, always. And I think that is the difference that one must understand. Regarding my background, yes, I was very fortunate to be born to Srimati Sushma Swaraj and Shri Swaraj Kaushal. But very strangely, my parents actually ensured very deliberately that I was never exposed to their political life. I did go campaigning with my mother when I was very young, but I think it was a very beautiful childhood which was very sheltered, kept away, very normal childhood. And I think a shout out to my school, Vasant Valley, who ensured कि मेरा दिमाग एकदम ज़मीन पे रहे, and to all my friends who actually made sure that there was a sense of normalcy. जब मैं बड़ी हुई और when my mother was at the pinnacle of her career, they ensured that I stepped out of the country. और वहां पर जब आप you're in an anonymous situation, वहां पर आटे दाल का भाव आपको पता चल जाता है. जब आपको खुद अपने बर्तन मांजने हैं, आपको खुद अपनी लॉन्ड्री करनी है, you have to look after yourself. And when I say you have to look after self, you have to show up for yourself, and that is very important to ensure that every individual needs to know this so that they become confident human beings. But yes, I would say that my mother's presence of politics definitely feels like कि जो स्नेह उनके प्रति था वो आशीर्वाद बनकर मुझ पर जरूर बरसता है. लेकिन that doesn't mean that I don't have to put in the work. At the end of the day, people are going to judge you. And by people, I mean my constituents. I mean the average Joe. They are going to judge you on your effort, on your endeavors, on your projects, on your vision. And as they say in litigation, you're as good or as bad as your last case. That's true for politics as well. I'm just going to say, I feel very blessed for this opportunity. And I'm very grateful कि लाल किले के परिसर से इस साल पिछले बार जब 15 अगस्त हो रही थी तो आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने इस देश के युवा का आह्वान करा था. He had asked for 1 lakh youth who do not come from any political background to come and join politics. I will not only chime in what he's saying, but even request very earnestly, the country needs you. Please come. It's very easy to look at movies and say politics is a very dirty game. If it is, then it is your responsibility to join it and clean it up. And especially to the young women of India, I want to say, remember, the 18th Lok Sabha is the last Lok Sabha where you're going to find women underrepresented. क्योंकि नारी शक्ति वंदन अधिनियम आ गया है. नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने इतना पुराना जो एक विघ्न था इस बिल में उसको हर लिया है. That means 33% seats are going to be reserved in state legislative assemblies and in the parliament for the मातृ शक्ति. अब मेरे देश की युवा मातृ शक्ति को मैं कहना चाहूंगी कि आप इस देश की भाग्य विधाता बन सकती हैं, आप इसके नीति निर्माण में योगदान दे सकती हैं. So please join politics.
Have you ever thought of ever writing a book about the most powerful woman that was part of your life, your own mother? Have you ever thought about it?
The honest answer is no, because I'm very possessive about her.
Really?
She's not here physically, और वो मेरा दुर्भाग्य है, लेकिन what I do have are very precious memories, and I think right now I'm going to all keep them to myself. I'm going to hoard them, and I don't think I'm ready to share them with the world.
But if there's one anecdote that you would like to share from how you viewed her working for the welfare of the people, especially for the women out there that you just said that they should come in front and join the government. If there's one anecdote that you remember that you would like to share, which stayed with you?
There are many anecdotes, but I'll tell you something. She always found the time for everything in her life. Sounds very dichotomous, right? But I think she was such a brilliant time manager. I had a bunch of friends of mine from school there was a sleepover. And I remember that she had promised that she's going to turn up with ice cream. And she got super delayed. कोई meeting थी, बहुत ज़्यादा late हो गई. रात के 12 बज गए थे. She came home around 1:45. We were all fast asleep and she woke us up. And I still remember Quality Walls की ice creams थी, जो normally आपको ये ठेले पे मिलती हैं. And I just found, and that's when I was told at midnight my mother stopped at India Gate, bought as much ice cream as she could from the bhaiya there and turned up just because she wanted to honor her commitment. I was a child. If she would have explained कि बेटा आज नहीं हुआ, I would have understood. And also, frankly speaking, हम लोग तो भूल भाल गए थे, हम लोग सो गए थे. But she kept her word. And the thing is that stayed with me.